Hi, Simon.
Hey, Lisa.
How was your weekend?
It was good. We actually went to a home show this weekend. We are in the process of looking how to update our 1974 kitchen to the new millennium, and hey, without spending $500,000 and 6 to 8 months of construction or something like
Yep.
that. So,
Well, that's
um,
exciting. Do you get
yeah.
any leads or do you get any like prospects of what you might do?
Yeah, so we talked to a couple different companies about just refacing cabinets where
Mm-hmm.
they replace the doors and the drawers, and they put a basically like a heavy veneer over the
Mm-hmm.
existing cabinet. So yeah, it was interesting going around because there's all kinds of offers. There's the booths are they've got information. They have samples of product, right? So you can actually see. We're also looking at replacing single pane windows,
Mm.
and again, affordably and not at a sort of outrageous price. Or we're also like it when it's easy. Somebody else
Yeah.
takes care of the whole thing, but then you pay for that.
When you went, was it like a typical convention where did you have a badge and they scan your badge if you visit the booth? Did they have that?
We just walked in, no badges. They didn't even have anybody charging, and I'm glad they didn't because it was actually a little tiny home show. I don't know if it's one of the first
Oh.
after the whole COVID thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it was like a small convention center, and it wasn't fully full kind of thing.
Mm. And then did anybody follow up with you, that places that you visited?
Yeah, we actually have had a couple different companies come out so far.
Oh, nice.
It's really interesting because everybody has their offers, and it's like they want you to sign now and you save an extra 5%, or it's the 15% holiday offer, or it's no
Yeah,
tax, or
they got to get people in before the end of the year, probably.
yeah, that's true. They're probably
Yeah,
trying to make their numbers. So
yeah, exactly.
well,
Well, this is it's mostly marketing, so that was not marketing. Maybe
well,
we
we
should.
talked about marketing.
I guess you're right. That's true. And
That's an interesting form of. I mean, it's not our world per se, right? Because it started as a one-on-one interaction with a human, right? At a
yeah,
show,
but
but
events, trade shows, and events are definitely a form of like it's casting a wide net. You're finding your
sure.
target audience, homeowners in this case, that want to do improvements. That's who they're targeting with that particular show. So a lot of
Yeah.
topics that you and I have covered in the past.
And there were 3 or 4 places where they wanted to capture us to write down our information or whatever, and we did
Mm-hmm.
with some of them just to
Yeah.
get
If you
more
were,
information,
yeah, sure.
which
Well,
I
that's
think
good.
is that's a good segue into what we're going to talk about today, right?
Yes.
Talk about something referred to currently as lead magnets.
Mm-hmm.
They used to be maybe referred to as offers, or some sort of exchange, essentially, for giving someone your information, like your address, your email address, your phone number, whatever. And today we want to talk about how to create offers, how to create that content, make sure it matches your audience, and then craft all the different pieces of that, and ultimately with a great call to action, right, to get people to convert to buy your product or service. So why don't you, Lisa, give us a brief sort of definition of what a lead magnet is?
Sure. And I'll also intertwine what the purpose of these things are. And
Sure.
in terms of capturing somebody into your marketing funnel, we've talked about the funnel at great lengths. And when you first start with uh, the unknown masses, if you will, they turn into prospects. You've identified a particular audience that you're trying to target, but you
Right.
might not have their information as to the specifically who they are. And in some cases, you want to create something that is going to pull to your website where you can capture their information, whether it's an email address, some cases, maybe it's a phone number that you need. Maybe you want them to actually come into if you have a brick and mortar shop, you want them to come in. but it's something that is going to be that hook. It's a magnet. That's why pulling magnet and lead magnet has been the more modern term. And it's something that you might entice somebody. Like in exchange, like Simon, you were saying, you were willing to give somebody your information because maybe their booth was of interest to you and they had this, 15% off by the end of the year. Even though that's coming closer to when you've made your mind up and you wanted to choose that vendor,
Right.
it's still a thing that you're like, I am willing, since this is available to me, I'm willing to give you my information.
Well, just that they would use, like, we would ask questions and they would be like, well, this is common, but we'd love to come into your home and specifically look at your situation. So they were very
Mm-hmm.
much trying to personalize, right, their response to provide the right information, right? But they're open to educating. Obviously, they want to educate and then sell you pretty quickly, right? They want to have someone come in and close the deal, but it was definitely an
Good
exchange.
point. You've probably done some research on this ahead of time, but it's like, do you need it to be UV, coating? Is it facing a sunny area? There's all these things. Like you don't know what you
Right.
don't know. And so sometimes
Exactly.
by the vendor that provides that information to you, you're like, oh, I think I can trust them because they're telling me, they're giving me information for free. And the further down you go, the more you're like, yeah, okay, I think I'm going to give them, my contact information and then maybe get emails from them.
Yeah, exactly. And they would send you a digital, guide essentially to Windows, right? Where they do some educating. So,
Yep. I mean, it could just be in an email. So that's something else I've seen. So now we're kind of getting into the like types of
mhm,
lead magnets where it could be, and it depends on your business. So I've been watching a lot of videos on retirement. I'll have to admit, and a lot of the video, it's almost like it's YouTube videos or webinars that they've put on YouTube that are educating people. It's just like
right.
it's either like CPAs or financial advisors that are like, these are the things that you need to think about, and all of them, they have offers like, oh, you can use our software if you give us your, sign up, give us your contact
Mm,
information. So there's lots of creative ways of doing this.
right.
And then you can also, they might want to get you into like an email series too, where every
Right.
week, every month you get a newsletter, something like that, build up your email
I mean,
list.
I think we would probably both agree that the lead magnet is really critical to your sales funnel. Like it's a really strategic offer that you have to develop, right?
Yep.
So, and you were going to touch on this, but tell me more about some of the common, effective sort of lead magnets that you've experienced or worked with or helped
Yeah.
create.
And maybe we can kind of, you probably have some ideas as well. So I can tell you in the business to business world, I mentioned webinars is a very common one to use. Maybe there's
Hmm.
like an ebook or some sort of a guide. Checklist is a common one here. Top 10 things to do something.
Right.
What else? Trials, free trial if you have software, or maybe it's a 15, 30-minute consultation could be a hook. You even mentioned the percentage off. Well, I wouldn't necessarily think of that as an offer, but it is a bit of a hook, right? In that context, you're
Right.
already pretty qualified because you've already decided that you're gonna do something to the
I
fact that
mean,
you went to this event.
right. And I think it's, part of the consideration funnel, right? If you think about awareness, consideration, and purchase as
Yep.
sort of the three sections, I feel like the lead magnet stuff is at the top of consideration and
Yes.
15% off is at the bottom of
Bottom part.
consideration
Very good
and,
point.
and probably flows into the purchasing also, right? It's,
Definitely. That might
yeah,
be the thing that pushed them over the edge.
exactly.
Now, I think there's also some more like consumer oriented ones. Like one thing I think I was thinking about, like I think we've used restaurants as examples. Happy hour, let's say there's discounts on appetizers. That's going to
Right.
bring people in.
Right. Or
It's different. You don't need to
buy,
give your name, but it's literally
yeah,
like bringing them in.
buy one get one, right? So
That's a good one.
I've seen that restaurants. I
Starbucks.
mean, think
Yep.
about the fact that in a sense a grocery store might offer something like that, right? Where you buy
Weekly
specials.
deals. Yep. That's another good example. I don't know. Maybe we'll come up with some other ones as we continue to talk, because so many different types of businesses,
Well,
and
and
you got to be creative about it.
yeah, and you touched on trial for software, right? But there's also trials for services. So if you
Yeah.
have a school or you're teaching or you're offering, like you said, financial advice, the trial might be, you
Or a
know,
half hour consultation
or
if
attend a
it's a
class,
service.
right? Like if you're going, you
Yeah.
want to try out a gym, you get a week free or a day free, and you can try classes there, and essentially that's quote unquote a trial, right?
Yep. Exactly.
So tell us about like more than what are some of those tips to choose the right format? Because you mentioned, it has to match your audience.
It does have to match your audience. Tips though. I don't I don't know that I have any, because I think it's like um every business is going to have a specific thing that works for them. So we touched on some B2B examples of like an ebook. I feel like that's not for everybody. So I
Right,
think it's just you have to kind of put yourself in your customers or your prospects' shoes as to what is valuable to them, and that's what you want to offer them. It's like,
right.
what is the thing that they would be interested in, that they are willing to give your email address, or
Well,
if that's the kind of business you have.
I mean, if you mentioned it earlier, right? The home show knew that I was a homeowner interested in this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there's probably a percentage of people that go because they have nothing else to do on Saturday, but that's kind of boring. I hope no one on our listener list is that. But the idea is they're like, they know that we took the time to come to a show. They're offering time back in the sense of a consultation, right? So that's another
Hmm.
way to tie it to your audience.
I
So,
just thought of another example. We've used cars as an example in the past, and I know I've used this example too, where let's say I'm thinking about buying a car and I start to get a little bit more interested in a particular car. There are car websites that allow you to configure your model, and when
mhm,
you start doing that, you become a little bit more like this looks like somebody that is very interested in this particular car.
right,
And usually they don't make you give your information, but if you want to save it, then you do have to create something where you have your email address and your contact information.
right.
And so now the dealers in your area are going to know you are interested, and so they can start to email you or be like,
Well,
hey, why don't you come in for a test
yeah,
drive?
specifically at the end of those configurators or those car builders, there is an offer like look for this in local inventory, right? And then it actually searches and says, oh, well, this dealer has the car. Maybe it's not exactly the right color, but they have the car and things. That's actually the
Yep.
other thing I did this weekend is I helped a friend buy a car. So test drove on one day, couple cars, and he bought it 24 hours later and drove it home the
Wow.
next day. There were offers related, like they knew we were Costco, right? So
Yeah.
Costco gives you a rebate.
I actually just thought of something like, all right, so take a marketing website that has a blog. I happen to know somebody that has a marketing website.
With a blog.
And there might be, um, let's say there's an article about messaging, and then there's also a messaging template that you can download. And so like those are things that you can then start to offer people that is of use. That
Right,
if you wanted to actually, it's gating is the term that we call it. If there's content that you want somebody to give their information before they can access it. So you should consider that though. And I think there's free things that you should just let people have, in my personal opinion. And then there's things that are of very high value that you might want to request
an exchange.
in exchange
Yeah,
for contact information.
good point.
Hey, do you have any other thoughts around that? Sort of
Mm,
generic
no,
education.
I
Yeah.
think so. Sort of taking that idea, what does an irresistible offer look like,
An
right?
irresistible offer.
What's your, what do you think? I mean, I think one of the ways you come up with that, and you mentioned it, is sort of audience pain point, right?
Yes.
Somebody's trying to learn something.
Yeah. So for you, you're like, I have leaky windows or whatever it is. It's cold in the winter. That's your
Right.
pain point. And so maybe some of the vendors talk about the products that they offer, and it's, double pane offers this, that, less noise, it may be more benefits oriented. And maybe they're offering, so you said that they offered you a discount, but maybe they offer you, I think the free consultation's not bad too. Like
No,
you,
I
like had you not gone to the home show, maybe you would find something and you're like, okay, I'll have them come. And so maybe they have some sort of like it would be like get your free quote and free, get your free quote, get your free or your custom,
right.
you know, recommendation or something along those lines. What the benefit is of what you would be getting. Let's think of what are some other examples? You offer free content, like here's this free guide, but a lot of times people can't actually implement it themselves. So
Right.
even though you've given them, here's exactly how you do it, they might not know how to do it. A podcast is a lead magnet. People have to
Hopefully.
subscribe. Yeah, exactly. Subscribe. And then maybe they, over time you're
No,
interested in hearing what they have to say. And, maybe you sign up for services.
sure. But I think even in the consumer world, right? You can offer, whether it's like a window company, which is probably a little bit bigger than a small business, but think about there's a contractor and they focus on windows, right? They do custom, right? Consultation, all of that stuff. The idea is that they're very much into personalization, right? So it's about you, the customer. The offer is, I'll come to your home and I will see exactly the situation, right? The room size, the what windows are they, facing, get a feel for the space. How do you live in it? And then I'll make a recommendation, right? It's more than just like coming in and measuring and offering you cabinets. It's like, how do you live? What would you change? That's that value add as well, in a
Yep.
sense. And some of that you can do digitally. Like you said, you could write an article about things to think about when you're remodeling a kitchen. It might be more drawers, less cabinets. It might be full length, have you thought about the
Design,
design
color,
or
blue on the
color?
bottom, white on the top. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. Blue on
Yeah.
the bottom and a natural oak on the top.
Yeah.
Just for
Yeah.
fun, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, and again, just like in a business where you might give someone a guide and they can't implement it, you give someone a kitchen design or cabinet design or whatever, and it's inspiration, right?
Yeah.
And the customer's like, wow, I can imagine this in my house. And so they're more willing to do that. There's high perceived value, and so they'll let someone in their home to help make that recommendation, right?
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
I mean, I think this leads into a nice segue of, once those people are in your home, it's really hard to say no.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Then it's
and,
going to be
and,
the contractor's job to
and
close the deal, if you
And I
will.
think that's a great example of a call to action, right? A strong CTA, right? They've done this work, they've measured things. They're telling you, a great call to action is like really clear. Buy today because you'll save X percent. There's some urgency, right? It's completely relevant to what they're interested in, right? It doesn't make sense. For example, let's use the restaurant. You wouldn't, if you knew somebody didn't drink. It doesn't make sense to promote drink specials, for example,
Right.
or offer
Sure.
them a free drink, right? Maybe you should think about something that is, if you don't know who your person is, maybe it's a combination of offers, right? Free dessert, free drink,
A
free
choice.
appetizer, right? Because then, you're going to appeal to more people. But the CTA is, come to our restaurant between these dates, right? Only valid
Yep.
between 4 and 7,
Well,
or
that's going to be in smaller type.
It is, but you
That's
can
like the
still.
terms apply.
But think
Yeah.
about what are those action
Yeah.
oriented language? It's like limited time, right?
Yep.
Or what else?
Well, verbs usually. So get, download, try.
Today.
Well, that's not a verb. So it's
No, but I
usually
mean,
like
get today
that's
down.
that's the urgency part. Like if you
Right.
have a deadline of something, but if that is the case, because in some cases you do want offers to be, if the goal is to just get people into your kind of pipeline, if you will, and the goal is I'm going to get their email addresses because they're vaguely interested, maybe this is the beginning of their journey of discovering whatever it is that you offer, then you want to try to grow your email list, and then your email will be the vehicle to keep giving them educational messages, to then convince them that you are the right product or person who's
Right.
company to offer this product or service to
But
them.
I also think that social media is a great place, especially if you're willing to pay for targeted, when you get someone to subscribe to your social media, and it can just be sort of the offer is incorporated into that social media. For example, there's a guy in England that I really like that works out and has all these tips, and he'll show you just by standing different, or the way you hold a dumbbell, you'll change which muscles are working in your arms, as an example. But at the end of his 3-minute social media reel or 2-minute reel, he says, I have a lot more tips, of different,
If
like,
you subscribe.
legs, if you subscribe or come to my website, or add me, so follow me, kind of thing. And I
Yep.
think,
Yep.
again, that's somewhere in between the funnel of awareness and consideration, right? I'm already sort of
Mm-hmm.
hooked now, and he's educating me. He reached out to me, actually, and his goal is he wants to pay him to be a personal trainer virtually, which is very interesting, right? I sort of shut him down because I'm not really into that, but his information is still really good, as long
Yeah.
as you can translate British measurements into English and things like that. But it's an example of how he incorporates the CTA and the offer
Yeah.
into all his communications.
Yes. So that brings us to the, like, where do you do this? How do you then distribute, um, like, what's the right form of communication at the right time for
Mm-hmm.
your audience to promote whatever it is that you're selling? And so I think it might be different. So the social media example that you gave, that's like, you're already here and you're already doing stuff. And by the way, or maybe he has other people that are subscribed to something else that is, maybe he's got get all my tips for $10 a month, and maybe that's like a inching people along a little bit more. And then
Right.
ultimately, though, he wants to get clients, which that doesn't seem very scalable to me, but that's fine. Yeah. So you want to talk about then, we always talk about measuring, like we want to measure everything.
Right.
And so even though we might say, oh, it seems logical to say subscribe as a call to action for an offer, maybe that's not the right word. Like, you have to always be testing these different calls to action, test different offers
Right.
to see, because again, what you think might be logical, it's like you got to let your prospects information, like data, tell you if it's effective or not.
So I'm sure some restaurants do this, but I'm guessing a lot don't. But imagine if you had 3 offers: free drink, free appetizer, free dessert, right? And you could test which of
Yeah.
those offers resonated with the most people. You might start saying, I'm going to do less offers around appetizers, and I'm going to promote more of my desserts, because maybe there's more
Exactly.
profit in that, and you sort of have to
Yep.
figure that out. But
Yep.
maybe, and you don't want to alienate other people, though, right? So again, you're sort of testing, but not necessarily eliminating until you find something that's just not working, right? And then don't spend time on it, right? What,
Exactly.
right? Definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, and it happens all the time. We all do it because we're sort of have our own bias, right, to these what we think works, right, and what we think
Yep.
is going to perform as far as like bringing people to our website or into our family as far as a business kind of thing. So what
Mm-hmm.
are there like tools? What are some of the things that you would sort of suggest that people look into for either creating the offer or the like you've talked a lot about content, but also
Yeah, the
um
content part is important. And if there's not something that is obvious to you, if you don't have people around you to brainstorm on what is something that you think might be a good um, offer, promotion, lead magnet, you can go to AI and say, this is what my business is. Like, what are some good examples of lead magnets? That might be one. Um, so it depends. It depends on the what it is that you might want to offer, because literally, like, you can, maybe it's something that you're just putting in a blog post, so that's pretty easy if it exists on your website already. So once you've kind of come up with that good idea, but then if you need a graph, something graphical to kind of, if you want to do there's um, infographics. Sometimes that's something that's interesting, or like lists if you want to format it in a nice way, not just in a document,
mhm,
or if it's a guide that you want to
mhm.
design. Canva is very popular. Adobe Express is very popular. There's also tools that can help you create a video if you want to do something like that as well.
You mentioned blog posts, and I think it's always great to think about, okay, I come via social media or email and I came to a blog post and it was educating me on some aspect of my business. It was educating the customer. I think they always need to have logical next steps. So, in other words, that your website, you need to make sure that none of these blog pages are dead ends, right? They all need to have a link, a call to
True.
action. It
What do
might
you want
be
them to do?
right. What do I do next? Sign up for my free seminar, sign up for download this, check out this next article, right? Related
Yeah.
article,
You might also
right?
have just a persistent call to action on your website, which is
Right.
request a quote, or,
And I think
call.
it's the marrying of what's relevant in their learning versus persistent, right? Which is always on kind of thing. So
Yeah.
what is there anything else like you think about like well
Yes. It is important to have a place to drive them to. You and I have talked about that before. And it should be something that is specifically made for it. So let's
mhm,
say I have a guide that I want somebody to download in exchange for a email address, contact information. I would create a landing page that is specific to this. And you and I are going to have a whole other topic about this because there's a lot to
yeah,
do. But so
right.
you do have to think about that.
Yeah, but I think what you're saying is you just got to make sure everything sort of fits together, right? That the user's experience is not jarring. It's not. It's fluid, right? Your
Yep.
steps that you take people through the pages, the content
Yep.
makes sense. So, what would be? How would you sort of recap our conversation today? Then, what are those things?
Yeah. So we talked about a couple of things. So we talked about what is a lead magnet. And so the concept of, having this thing, some sort of an asset that is going to add value, that is going to help move prospects along, hopefully turn them into customers down the road.
Hmm.
But it's just sort of that earlier stage. We kind of talked about some types, literally any kind of deliverable imaginable, but in terms of content themes, something that's adding value, something that's perhaps educational.
Hmm.
Um, Again, you're going to have to be creative. Anything else in that area that we touched on?
Now, I think
Um,
content, and then what happens next, right?
how do you then take the thing that you're offering, and you have to use the right message, the right call to action to actually get somebody to act on
Hmm.
it.
Right.
and testing and measuring everything. I think that's a common theme with just about everything that you and I talk about. It's like you got to make sure that you measure, and I would say you got to make sure that you test things. And then I touched on a couple of suggested resources for tools. There's a whole bunch of them, but if you want to do a little bit of research on that too.
I think there's one thing that just popped in my head that I would
Yeah.
say to anybody who's out there creating offers, creating content. If you are asking people to submit an email or submit their information, fill out a form, whatever it is, please follow up. Follow up
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
an email acknowledging that you got their information. If it wasn't, if there wasn't an email provided, but they gave you a phone number, you can text them, you
Call.
can call them. And that is so critical, because if you go out and say, I'm just going to do all this stuff and add a box to capture email, and then you don't do anything with it, people are like, well, what happened? Like, I just gave you one of the most valuable pieces of my personal information and I didn't get anything, right? I didn't get a follow-up. I didn't get an acknowledgement, et cetera. So just, that's my
Smart.
big tip of the day. Like,
Agreed. And put yourself in their shoes. Like,
exactly.
it's so frustrating when it's kind of like, here I am giving you this information. You don't even follow up. Yeah, I'm not going to do business with you.
Exactly.
Pretty easy. Yeah.
It's a big brand thing, and you might not think about it, but if you're gonna do it all the way, finish it, do it well, follow up.
Yep.
All right.
Good place.
Well,
Good place to stop.
good place to stop.
From tangents to tactics, it's mostly marketing.
Check out the description for more resources or visit itsmostlymarketing.com to learn more about marketing and about Lisa and I. Let us know in the comments what areas of marketing you'd like us to cover.
And big favor, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, or write a review to help us get the word out. If you know someone who might find this helpful, please share it with them. Thanks for tuning in.